Nice. Thumbs up, man. Welcome back, everybody. Instagram, Facebook. Welcome back to Elyse TV, your weekly dose, man. I want to welcome our guest today, Rudy Cadet, one of our tasting expert emeritus here at the winery.
Hello.
Typically, it means he's watched a couple of the shows and goes, they need my help desperately, so I need to come on and rescue him, man. I'm going to let Rudy introduce himself, and while he's doing that, just kind of contemplate what we're doing today. The whole theme of the show is we're putting vintage 97 up against 98, and rather than kind of go in and sort of judge 97 against 98 on face value, we thought we'd blind taste each flight here and see what we come up with. Rudy, what's up, man? What are you doing? Welcome back.
Thank you. So I just want to say I'm
Cheers.
Glad I'm here, and thanks for the invite. Looking forward to trying some of these wines. It's always interesting to see how wine evolves over the years and what kind of characteristics jump out. And I guess we got some brown bags here, so it'll be really fun to guess what is what and.
An homage to the heyday of hobos.
So thank you.
Take me back to high school in those 40s.
Right? And we'll weave in a little bit. I know you guys have looked. Boy, these are cellar temp too today, aren't they?
Perfect condition.
We'll throw out some highlights from both of those years. It's been, I think, one of the fun kind of textures to us doing a lot of these library tastings is kind of going back in the calendar a little bit and going, what was I doing in 97? So first off, 97 for me was my second year in the Napa Valley. I was still full throttle at Trevigne and the Chef Chiarello show. Old GM Kevin Cronin and all of his band of merry men. We were doing a very conservative 1,200 covers a day between lunch and dinner, you know.
This was a machine.
That was a rock star band back in 97. What were you, man?
Wow. 97, I was in San Jose working hard in wireless communications, and it was an interesting time for me because I had just really started to appreciate wine maybe a couple of years before that, and it was an interesting time. And I think I should probably censor what I say about that time in my life.
Well, this is a place of truth and honesty. This is kind of what we do here, man.
I have a non-disclosure agreement signed.
Maybe by the third pair of wines, we might get a little more out of them.
Right?
Yeah, it was a fun time.
This wine has got fruit, man. The color has not. I'm certainly seeing some age around the edge, but not a tremendous amount of color loss. The middle of my tongue is still pure dark fruit. I'm still getting a little bit of that kind of classic pepper. There's almost a little bit of that resinous, the thyme, lavender, sage thing going on for me on the soft palate there. There's a lot going on in this little glass, man.
There is.
It's just rocking and rolling along.
And so did we tell them we're starting with the Syrah?
Sure.
We know that.
Yeah.
These aren't completely blind. We know the three different couples of wines that are in there. We just don't know which one's which. So we started out with one of the two Syrahs, and in a moment we'll get to the next one. But yeah, I agree with Christopher. The fruit is still there. It's fresh. It's not overly opulent, but it's soft and definitely preserved. Rudy, what do you think?
Right. Well, one thing I'll say is, when I describe wine, I'm not in the wine industry, so a lot of times gentlemen like you two will throw out different types of fruit, different spices. You use sage and some other terms, and so I kind of wrap my head around. Okay, what are they trying to tell me? What should I look for?
Right.
So over the years, I've kind of learned to just appreciate it the way that I want to appreciate it. So,
Absolutely.
So when I try this, the first thing that jumps out at me is. How does it feel in my mouth, and how long does the taste linger even after I've swallowed? And so with this particular one, I do get different spices. Okay, now it's harder for me to tell you exactly which spices. To me, it's definitely like pepper.
Okay.
And then I think about what kind of products are in my kitchen that.
Yep.
Kind of
pink pepper, black pepper, white pepper.
Well, pepper,
green pepper.
So here's
as Slow it down. Slow it down.
Pick a pepper.
Here you go. Pick the peppers. If you've ever taken a steak and put Worcestershire sauce on it,
Yes.
okay, that's. I'm not saying that the wine tastes like that, but there's some characteristics that kind of jump out, and it's like, wow, this is pretty good.
Sometimes you'll hear Cubby use the phrase savory sometimes, and I think that's the reference he's making is there's a real savory quality to that. In some cases, you can look at vineyards. I find it in white wine over in Europe more than I do domestic whites, but there's a salinity almost in certain wines. Like you can almost feel like the ocean's influence in some of those wines, coastal vineyards for sure. I'm really happy with this. I think this is... so, broad brushstrokes, 97, 98. Where were you in 97?
I was finishing up high school here in Napa and was working at Don Giovanni's in Napa. Yeah. So just starting my wine education. Hadn't fully gotten into it unless there was a free leftover quarter of a bottle. Pretty sure I knew nothing about what I was drinking and didn't actually focus on what I was drinking. But it was gone. Finishing that up, and that was a great education, just like you at Trevina. Don Giovanni's and Trevina were two of the most frequented restaurants by people in the valley and tourists, and we just, 1,000 covers in a day was
We were blessed. I had Evan Goldstein coming by and doing education for Sterling back in those days at Trevina. We had Bruce Nyers giving us talks about the wine industry and importing for Kermit Lynch. We had Chris Zimmerman from the old Winebow days bringing all of his knowledge with Italian wines in, and it was really, the dedication the restaurant showed Trevina back in the day to educate the staff, because we didn't have somms, right? It was up to the staff to really move the wines, and so it was kind of interesting to have a whole staff be able to buy wine collectively going, we can sell that all day long as a group of people.
Yeah, you had your knowledgeable servers that kind of just took the reins, and it would probably be like, 2 to 4 different servers, and they were just kind of the on-floor somms, and you looked to them for advice, and they took the time before shifts to taste through with the vendors and decide what.
So this kind of comes full circle to your comment, Rudy, which is, I would sit down and go, this reminds me of, Cipollini onions, or reminds me of spearmint, and so all these experienced guys around would be like, okay, so what you're describing as onion is a little sulfur. So when you smell that in a wine, so it became this vocabulary thing over the years where they would take your sensation and, I almost wanted to create like our Elyse website. If you go to it, it's fun to play with it, cascades, so you can kind of go as far down the rabbit hole with knowledge as you want. I always thought it'd be nice for tasting notes for us to have here's the Big Chief pencil descriptors. Here's the 6 crayon box. Here's the 144 crayon box. So you could go as elaborate down that path with descriptors and skip a few stones if you wanted to keep it light.
Right.
I think that
the other descriptive that I would say, this particular wine, it's very smooth, very very elegant on the palate. If you've tried some younger wines, it has that bit of acidity or the alcohol kind of shocks your mouth. This has none of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can tell it's very delicately made. It feels very well. It lingers. A lot of times with, I don't know which is which, but a lot of times with the older Elyse Syrahs, I've served them blind with some Rhones. Maybe a Chateau Beaucastel from Rhone. And my friends, they struggle. They can't really tell much of a difference. It's that well.
I love that we were tasting 98, by the way, because here I am randomly leaving Chateauneuf one day. And anybody that's driven around, especially France and Italy, the roundabouts, you have to learn this whole technique where you have to know the biggest city in the direction you want to go in, because your town will be on that roundabout, because the only name you're going to see on that roundabout is that big city. So you kind of learn what's in between you and the rest of the world and how to spin off. So I'm leaving Chateauneuf and take the wrong turn on the roundabout, and I'm driving through all the ostrich eggs, these big galette, big boulders that the vines grow out of down there, and there's nothing, no big ornate sign, just a little metal mailbox that says Perrin, Perrin on the side of the mailbox. I'm like, it can't be that easy.
Yeah, right.
So I totally just drive up this gravel driveway, no appointment, typical, right? No appointment, no nothing. And I get to this wrought iron gate, and this guy, super, super nice guy, comes out, and he goes, "No, you don't have to you don't have to look so, freaked out. You found Beaucastel. This is where we are." And I'm like,
Wow.
"You've got to be kidding me!" I just wandered into this place, and he goes, "Normally, I'd kind of send you off, but," he goes, "I got a couple of the owner's friends coming in. We've already opened a bunch of wine. You guys, oh, you're Sam from California. Oh, come on in. Let's go down 3 floors." So we started drinking through the Beaucastel library. They're like, pick a number, so let's do 83 Villivant. Let's try one of the last homage de Jacques Perrin, and so anyway, 98 was one of the greatest vintages of the Beaucastel homage I've ever. And the funny thing is, it's supposed to be their wine where they celebrate Mourvèdre. Instead of the Grenache and the Syrah, it really is the backbone of the wine. And so 98 was one of the few times it was a Grenache-based homage, and it was just one of my favorites, hands down.
Okay, so normally they're celebrating Mourvèdre, but then in 98 it was more Grenache.
So this one has a little more dust for me.
Really? So this one, when you just look at it, if I hold it up like this, to me it looks a little darker. If I hold it up against the white paper, then reality kicks in. I can see, the edge is, a little more, I guess, what's the word, tawny?
Sure.
Is that
Yeah,
right?
turning a little brickish towards the end.
Brickish, okay.
I like the tawny.
And then,
Give me another glass.
Oh, yeah,
and then
absolutely.
when I try it though, clearly to me they're not the same wine.
Yes. Cheers to that.
And on the second one, I'm getting more fruit up front.
Okay. What would you call it brighter? Like more red fruit than dark fruit, or is it still dark fruit, but it's just more in the front?
No, I would. Okay, so this is good. What's the difference between red and dark fruit?
Yeah.
So to me, red fruit is don't laugh at me, I was say strawberries, but plums, strawberry, cherries. Whereas dark fruit might be blueberry, darker cherries. You get those cherries.
Absolutely.
Darker.
Absolutely.
A little more punch to it. But again, because of the time era that these come from, I can tell that it's changed. Yeah. And to me, the fruit is lighter, but it is more pronounced than what I remember. I said I got pepper.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not saying that with this one.
I agree.
I'm getting the more fruit.
Yeah. This one has a to me the earthiness is coming through, but the fruit kind of plays with it nicely. Like it's a little, like I said, a little brighter style for me. I'm getting a little bit more red than dark fruit on this one. And when I said dustier, it's just because that nose wasn't immediately fruit mixed with other things. Like I could just tell a little more cinnamon,
earth a little more right off the bat. And here's the first one, just if you want to compare nose. I haven't tasted it. If you want to go back and forth.
97, good gracious. It was one of those vintages where California, let's just say that 97 was one of those pivotal years in California where we had survived the old school winemaking lessons of the 70s and 80s. And we had phylloxera problems that were being replanted massively in the, especially the 80s. As a few more dollars came into the wine business, hey, we got money to replant these vineyards. We'd done our homework. So the 90s, especially 97, was one of those vintages where it had been about 10 years since we had massive replantings in the Napa Valley. So all the guessing, new trellising systems, denser planting, sexier forms of Cabernet and Syrah and Pinot and everything. Chardonnay was getting a lot more engineered and a lot more kind of site-specific with the farming. So we had a perfect harvest in 97 for all these new vineyards coming online. So it was just one of those perfect harmonic convergences. I think things like Robert Parker and The Spectator had seen their popularity and their influence escalate in the business by then. Do you read those guys? Are you a score guy? Do you watch?
Yeah. You know what? I do. Over the years, I've learned that probably my opinion is means more to me than theirs.
Hey, it means something to us too, man. That's why you're here today, boss.
But one thing I have come to understand is the influence that those guys, the influence rating has on wine, not only on the price, but on what people gravitate towards and will purchase. And I mean, you kind of touched on 1997, 1998, I'm not going to say complete opposites, but they were very different.
Pretty
when
close,
it comes to their ratings.
Yeah.
Right? And you saw that reflected in their price, on the price of wine.
Yep.
you're right. When Parker and Wine Spectator, and when they come out and they say, "Hey, this was a good vintage," you see the prices just climb higher and higher and higher, and they become more expensive.
You should see, go to a winery, look at their library releases. They'll be like reasonable price, 92, 94, 96. 97's at $500 a bottle.
Right,
Then the 98 comes back down here. And I was like, come on, man, seriously?
Yeah. And but what's fascinating, and why I'm really glad that you guys invited me here today, is because over the years, what's it been, 23 years?
Is it really?
They've changed, and 98.
It's the most mature 23-year-old I've ever run into in my entire life.
98 got a bad rap.
Right.
Okay, but me and my friends have discovered that they're drinking very, very well these days.
Yeah.
Grant, were you born yet in 97?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
When were you born?
91.
All right, there you go.
All right.
Yeah, see, good
Kindergarten.
vintage. You were born in a good vintage, man. You got lucky, man. 69 was horrible.
So here's a little thing I picked up from you guys watching you.
Okay.
When you try to reflect on, what was taking place in the world
Right.
when these wines were created,
Right.
born. Okay, so I got one.
What you got?
In 1997.
Yes.
Ready?
Yes.
Yep.
This is a good one.
Okay.
1997 was the year that the TV series from the 60s, Lost in Space,
Yes.
took place.
No way. Are
1997.
you serious?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That was like
Right.
that was the
Foreshadowing.
future year that they were.
1997
Interesting.
Oh my
was Lost
God,
in
that's
Space.
awesome, man.
Yeah, even though it was in the 60s,
Right.
They were on their little spaceship that crashed, and robot warning,
Yeah,
warning.
like the
Oh
Back
my
to the
God,
Future
yes.
type
Yeah.
thing.
The remake was good. It's not the same without the
Right.
really kitschy black and white stuff, man.
Dr. Smith.
Absolutely, man. I
But that
lived for
was-
that show.
That was supposed to have taken place in 97.
Okay, so the two
Interesting.
daughters, Penny and what was Donna? What was the blonde daughter's
You
name?
got me on this show. I've never even heard of it.
Because it was just like Mary Ann. It was just like Ginger Mary Ann. They just had, of
Penny
course, they
and-
figured out
Donna would probably get a
travel
good
the
guess.
universe. You just have to bring two hot daughters with you. Apparently, it was just kind of a thing for Will Robinson.
Yep.
That's amazing. Now, when I looked it up in 1997, all I wrote down was the ear. That was the Tyson Holyfield fight where Tyson decided to snack on Holyfield during the boxing match there.
Right.
This 97. This
Yeah.
second one, which I'm guessing was the 97, I already said it out loud. It's got a lot. It's opening up. It's like it didn't show us
Very
everything
much
when we
so.
first opened it. It keeps coming on and coming on. Now, you guys want to taste through all six and go back and unveil? Or do you want to
Let's
unveil
make our
each
calls
little
as we
set
go.
as we go?
I'm open.
Let's do the groups.
Let's do the
reveal-
groups?
Yeah,
yes.
let's-
So first, before we do anything, I
Oh, nice.
picking
You got
one
the
to the
score
other.
sheet.
I'm going to go ahead and say for flight number one, I picked B, or A is my favorite out of the two, and I'm guessing that was a 98. So if you're going to pick a favorite, A or B, what do you got?
God. All right, do you want to taste
I'm-
A again?
I'm gonna go with A,
Okay.
just because I really have an appreciation for spices and well balanced.
Yeah.
The second bottle, I would say, like I said, I got more fruit initially, but I'm thinking about enjoying this with a meal.
Yeah.
And like some braised lamb shank.
Mhm.
I just think that
Lamb and sorrel love
that one would,
each other.
would be better. So I'm gonna go with bottle A.
Okay.
As your favorite.
Yeah, and
Any venturing a guess on the vintage?
I think it's a 97.
All right. I like it. Well, for my lovely wife who's at home watching today, she can tell you, if I declare loudly that it is a 98, if you go to Vegas and bet 97, chances are you got about a 95% chance of making money on this deal.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it is, just because of the difference in the fruit and,
Yep.
and the spice.
Absolutely.
And what
But I'm completely guessing. Initially, right when I tasted A, I thought that was going to be the 97. And this is B. I think B is my favorite.
Okay.
And I am going to go with A being the 97.
Okay, so B is
so
98.
98, yeah.
All right, excellent. Do you want to
Complete guess.
Do you want theme music? How do you want to unveil there? And just just to kind of put your head around it. So 97, minimal rainfall, which meant we had a leisurely harvest. It was warm. The tagline was early, heavy, and warm. So that meant that the vines had progressed with a little bit of spring rain. It was enough to get them fired up. They moved through a warm summer. It was hot, but there weren't spikes. It was, everybody loved 97 because the yield was up after a few rough kind of vintages with the weather and whatnot. But then we got this weird rain in September. So this is one of the years where I couldn't figure out why there would be helicopters hovering over vineyards. And it turns out a couple of the growers could find friends that could launch helicopters from either the hospital, the Angwin Airport up there, or Napa. They would hover over the vineyards and blow all of the water out of the vineyard and try to dry it off because they weren't getting enough breeze on the ocean to deal with mold and mildew and didn't want to spray it with copper and all that
and
stuff.
protect against frost at certain times.
So it was really interesting to see the helicopters hovering over the vineyards in 97. But on paper, it was supposed to be the vintage of the century. A lot of people still claim it was one of the great vintages on the planet.
And just like I feel in blind tasting, sometimes you have the way to be recognized as one of the best wines in a flight is to be right after one of the worst wines. And I feel like 98 suffered from being right after one of the best vintages, or at least proclaimed right off the bat. And because it was so difficult and fruit didn't get as ripe as fruit lovers like their wine, it was rated one of the worst vintages of the century. And that over time hasn't panned out to be as true.
It's funny how many times when you're doing blind flight tasting, how much one of the sort of bizarrely flawed wines can finish very high up in the rankings because it just shows differently than the rest of the wines. It's sort of like, oh, that was really unique, and so it kind of sticks out. You want to unwrap them? Or do you want to do them at the end? What do we do? What do we decide?
Go for it.
Go for it. It's like Christmas, man. Just jump in there. What do you got? A? All right, we're unwrapping A.
A is the 97.
Look at that! We have a winner. Cubby is our master blind taster, by the way.
No, I just took your advice and went the opposite of you because I knew I'd probably get it right. I said it was a complete guess, so that is not skill right there.
That is awesome. And you got the 97 right as well. So I was the only wrong one there. You guys rock.
And then the 98.
Oh, it's good. We weren't lying, and they were two different wines. That I'm happy to do. If they were the same wine and we called them differently, that would have been embarrassing.
We have been notorious for taking the very same wine and opening it twice and watching people go, I think I definitely prefer A, okay.
Yeah, it's a fun thing I like to do in tastings. If there's a wine that I'm tasting somebody on that's been open for a day or two, to grab the exact same wine and open it fresh, and come back and blind taste them on that same wine and see which one they like better, and they'll always choose one or the other, but then to reveal that it's the same wine just with a couple days difference, really, I think that's a great educational tool because...
Now, we're going to be doing two Zins for the next two flights, just because normally I would have done Syrah and Cabernet. The library enthusiasts out there, and thank you for all of your support, have basically drunk us out of all of our 90s Cabernets. Our library for Cabernet has gotten pretty thin. There's some Magnums left out there. We're always trying to make sure that everything we're tasting here today, if you want to replicate this kind of tasting at home and have fun with it, these are all available. We've got full verticals available of all of these. Now, some of them certainly less than others. The 97s are probably a little lower than the 98s by reputation. They sold a little differently. And I think it's only the 97 or mags of the two Zins. I don't even have magnums of. The rest of it is long gone because the library enthusiasm. When the wines are well made and well stored, you have a real time machine availability at a winery like this where you can go, let's look at what 92 was like, and instead of kind of putting a heavy hand from winemaking over the top of that evaluation, I think the Elyse wines give us a really clear sense of vintage.
Also, real quick, the previous the founders of Elyse purchased this property, I think, where we're at and filming 97.
Yes.
So it was like 95 when they were 97 they were bottling 95s, maybe even halfway through. So pretty much 95 on. A lot of the Magnums and the 750s that are here really have not been moved since they were bottled. So They come off the bottling line and they store some cases, and then they just sit there in perfectly temperature-controlled environment, which is ideal. That's always kind of the special thing in France when you get into their cellars at the chateau.
You know, from here to about here, I like to store
They pull
wine
them
in
right
a
off
perfectly
the shelf.
temperature-controlled environment as well, man. You know, like I got my own little.
It's a little
cellar.
warmer storage than I would go for, but
One thing I'd like to say, just in closing on the Syrahs, you know, when you do your research and you think back, okay, 1997 was proclaimed to be, you know, one of the greatest years in California, and when you look at the wine critics, particularly Parker,
Okay, just
Yeah.
say it. Bob, we're talking to you right now.
he really favored very fruit forward
Yes.
wine. Okay, so if you had what we like to call fruit bomb, okay, but if you had like extremely high alcohol, a lot of fruit, it got a good rating. But what's interesting is, so the characteristics that I picked up on the 97 that I told you I liked about it was the spice. And the 1998 wine, which didn't have as much fruit upon release and suffered with poor ratings, I described as more fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see the way that wine evolves over
Yep.
the years.
Yeah.
And so, man, if you have wine for sale, it'd be really, really good to pick up both just to get that contrast. But if you're the person that really likes fruit, then the 98 still.
it
Yeah.
seems
Still
against conventional wisdom, but a lot of times the vintages that
Pick up
are
the
most
wines.
fruit out the
Tell us
gate,
what your vote is.
that's
Yeah.
quickest to fade. And then you get those underlying spice and characteristics, but the fruit that, or the wines that weren't as fruit forward, they're preserved more because they were cooler vintage, so that kind of stays around so it can share the stage with what was originally most pronounced, and that's secondary, tertiary
Yeah,
characteristics.
and the reason we're talking about 98 in this way is so now you picture that weather from 97, and here comes 98, and 98, like in a lot of the other shows we've done in good vintages and a solid rainfall for us is in that kind of from November 1st to, let's say, March 1st, it's about 30 inches of rain. It's kind of our Napa season. So 98 comes along, and 98 was one of those years where I remember, I think it was from Thanksgiving until almost St. Patty's Day, it rained every single day. It never stopped. We got 60 inches of rain that year in that same time frame, whereas in 97, I think we got, 15. And so a lot more water to deal with. It delayed flowering because of all of that. Then you had poorly timed rain and hail that shattered and knocked stuff off. We never got a hot enough summer to bake off all that water, and it was just everybody started pulling in sort of underripe fruit in August and September because it just wasn't. They start throwing grapes on the ground to try to thin out and get Mother Nature to help out and pull leaves. So any grower winemaking team that decided to just gut check it out, man, and pray for that Indian summer of late September kind of thing. They brought a hell of a harvest in 98, made some great wines. Not as much, but they really made some fantastic wines. What we've noticed in Napa sometimes in those heavy rain years is your mountain vineyards are going to survive those conditions much more than your valley floor because the water tends to run down and dilute, whereas all that drainage in the upper reaches is still able to make kind of a leaner, kind of more concentrated harvest from up there. So that's your broad brushstroke, kind of 97, 98. Let's see, 97, what else happened? That was the first year that Big Blue, IBM, beat Gary Kasparov for the first chess master to ever lose to a computer.
And now, after the Queen's Gambit, we have a bunch of chess experts out there, so that'll hit home.
For those that talk about something that never caught on, 1997 was officially the first Prius rolled off the assembly line. And that was purchased and buried for almost 15 years before it was re-released.
Yeah. And now it's caught on.
Yeah, right. Now people are waiting a year to get one, man, Yeah.
I think they mentioned that the price of gas was about $1.20.
Yeah,
$1.23.
I saw
The
that.
Wall Street, the Walmart, the market had gone crazy. It had crested over 7,000 for the first time.
And so if it's $1.22 national average for gas, so California is still like $2.50. Probably.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
They said a movie ticket was like $4.59.
Wow. What about my student ID?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I kept that high school ID for a while.
And for everybody that's a stargazer, that was also 97 was that year where right as you drove up Highway 29, you saw Hale Bopp all year long, that comet that came by, the big old, I mean, it was one of those that you could see no telescope. It was gigantic right on the horizon for all of the 97 out there. All right, so we're moving on to 97 against 98 Zinfandel. This is Morrisoli Vineyard. Whatever is in my glass right now, whichever vintage, is absolutely spot on for me. If I'm looking at 20-plus-year-old Zinfandel, which again would be so likely to ever happen in my house, I wouldn't have had this 15 years ago with my kind of discipline. But this is really fascinating.
Yes.
Like I really am finding this an interesting wine. And while you guys are talking about it, what would make you think Zinfandel? I'm always curious.
You mean when I taste this, how do I know it's Zinfandel?
Oh, yeah,
or
is there
smell,
something?
Well, just upon the taste, first of all, this I'm amazed that this is that old because there's so much. The explosion of fruit is still there. It drinks like a well balanced, fruity wine that has leveled out, and it's just. It's like the perfect wave. It's really nice.
Yeah, I get this. I mean, a lot of times when people talk about Zinfandel, there's jamminess and spice, and I kind of get the spice red fruit, whether it's raspberry, strawberry, and it's not really light red fruit. There's a darker red fruit, but to me it's red. But that spiciness might kind of tip off just on the nose that this is a Zinfandel. Who knows?
For me, when we talk about red fruit early on, rhubarb is one of those things.
Yeah.
If rhubarb pops into your head, your brain goes, "Ooh, I think we're in Zinfandel world." There's something about that plays around with the acidity and the red fruit notes. But once again, this one I saw a little more color change to the rim, but the mid palate is sound. There's a good balance from start to finish. There's not a disjointed where the fruit's decent, but then you kind of get that dusty fall off. It's a complete wine start to finish. I'm impressed, man.
Yeah. What's really interesting with this wine, for those that know me, I'm always talking about food pairings, but this wine is well made and can be drank by itself.
Yeah.
It's, in a nice
Your favorite dark closet in the house.
No, it's really well held together. The fruit is sweet and round, but it's not oxidized. It's not turned to that pruny, raisinated area. It's still that pleasant, sweet fruit. Really well balanced. It's not full-bodied. It's kind of that medium-bodied, but tannins are fruit. You kind of feel them in the lower front part of your mouth. But then really good acidity.
Right? Yeah,
really good acidity.
Mid palate just gives you this bang of fruit that's still there, and it's got richness to it. Like there's a full finish there. Bravo, man.
Yep, that's a good one. So what does that right off the bat make you think vintage-wise? Like,
well,
just based
if I extrapolate it with Syrah, I'm thinking 98 on this one. Just because of the red fruit, just because of that rhubarb thing that stuck in my head makes me think of the slightly wetter year there. And Morrisoli that is just, if you're going to have a wet year, boy, Morrisoli is right in the path of all that water coming down off the hills there.
This is drinking really well, and for me, I would pair this with maybe some pasta with. Well, just me. I would do pasta with like a red sauce, maybe some beef in there, some Parmesan on top of it, and just this is the kind of wine I think it would marry well with that. Mm-hmm. And I think even with the food, the fruit might become a little bit more pronounced, but it's got enough to drink by itself.
Yeah, one of our kitchen tricks of all time is you take mushrooms and you throw them in your saute pan with just a little sprinkle of olive oil and let them start to sweat, and then right before you pull them out, you hit them with the fresh thyme and the garlic. You put that in any pasta sauce that you've made, and it makes vintage wine like this sing. They love mushrooms. There's something about the earthiness of the age on the wine and the mushrooms in the cooking that just sing for me when we're making older wine pairings like this.
Wow.
This one right off the bat, just comparing the colors, since I have two glasses, I'm kind of cheating. More color variation. It's kind of faded a little more than the previous wine. A little more rustic, less depth in the middle of the color, or in the middle of the wine. and a little more savory on the nose. I haven't tasted it yet.
Port-like concentration on the fruit. There's a real sweetness still left in the fruit there on the palate.
I almost got like beef bouillon
Yes.
right when I
I'm almost
put
like
my
the
nose in
Timor
it.
stew kind of beef, man. You know.
Or that Worcester kind
Yeah.
of reminded me that it would go really well with that.
This you mentioned the word sweet, so that's exactly the descriptive I would use. It's definite. Wow, same vineyard.
Yeah.
It just is sweeter.
Yeah, that's the thing I loved about Ray's winemaking and the team was because I think they had a very similar approach every vintage to their winemaking. There was a classic house style. For us, years later, we really get to see that vintage reflection. They didn't sort of keep pushing the vineyard to make it taste more like the 97. It was like, well, this is what the 98
Yeah, it was a recipe in a way on how he made it, which was kind of hands off. We're going to make it the same way-ish every year and just let that style be consistent with how it reflects the vineyard. The nose, I would never think it was going to taste this way based on the nose.
It's got a lot
like
bigger
that
fruit
sweet
than the nose
yeah.
suggests. Yeah, no, for sure.
Almost like a borderline dessert wine.
Yeah, or tawny, like you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, for sure.
I've definitely used Zinfandel towards the end of a meal. I used to love using Zin after big cabs because I thought Zinfandel, with its acidity, was a better cheese pairing than a lot of big Cabernets because it didn't fight tannin.
Oh, the nuttiness in this, and I don't know if it's blue cheese but you can definitely go with some almonds.
The stinkier
and
the cow's milk cheese,
Yeah.
this thing would just sing with it, because
very much so.
too much salt in the sheep's cheese, too much acid in the goat cheese, so you're kind of stuck with the runnies, man,
Cigar.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for
What's
sure.
your cigar pairing for this one,
I would. Wow.
This is your blonde Connecticut wrap Anniversario that's got a little softer, wrap finish to it. Where's Jim Zimmerman out there, man? Where's our cigar aficionado? We got to get Jim Zim back on the wire.
And it's not just the fruit. I'm also after a while, I'm also getting some of the baking spices. I guess,
Very much so.
I would say.
But almost now we're in a different part of the spice rack.
It is.
So instead of pepper, now I'm reaching almost for those exotics in the baking and pastry section.
Exactly.
Is that a clove I'm getting instead of cinnamon?
But that's what I'm getting from grapes grown at the same exact place, and so it's really interesting to understand why grapes taste differently.
Wow.
Right? It's you got your what's in the ground. We talked about sun. We talked about rain.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the winemaker. Who maybe they're in a different mood this year than they were last year.
Nobody
Maybe
talks
it's
enough
the
about
winemaker.
that, man.
Yeah,
You watch wine. You can't make good wine if you're just every day on the crush bed, man. You got to be happy at some point in what you do, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see winemakers that kept a journal and then release that journal for that year and see all the personal things.
Madness.
and then also we know it from just this past year and maybe past lots of years. What's going on in the world affects all sorts of things.
Right.
And that's why it's fun to look back on 97, 98 as a vintage, but also what was going on in the world.
Now, the funny thing about 98 is the way we had it in Napa with the rains and the mild summer was an anomaly. If you go back and look at the global kind of NOAA, in the weather, 98 was the hottest year on record globally.
Whoa.
From any recorded year to that date. Wow. So, as a matter of fact, I found something on the NOAA website that talked about 1998 was a cataclysmic year because it got so hot, it warmed so many of these Pacific Ocean waters. 15% coral reef loss in 1998 alone because of how warm the water got, because of how hot that year was on record. And that's just one of those little markers where the planet's like, yeah, I'm not meant to be at this temperature for long, man,
I feel like that's when 4 years earlier and then on we started hearing El Nino a lot.
Absolutely.
And La Nina, and
yes,
we realized how none of us spoke Spanish.
So anybody that wants to look up weather patterns, El Nino is this classified weather pattern where you got warmed Pacific waters and you created a heavier rainfall that year as a result, and the warmness would change. Like you would get like the worst Dungeness crab bloom that year because they don't like temperatures warm. They like them ice cold right off the coast. Those are the years we got those red algae blooms. Where all of a sudden you got. Anyway, it's just funny to see that 1 degree difference. You know, that ocean temperature. Everybody's like, you have no idea what a massive thing that can change, man. You know. Yeah, and that crazy. Here we are having this cool summer, and the rest of the world's like, no, hottest ever.
Should we vote on our?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Favorite?
this second one I'm trying. The longer it's in the glass, the fruit keeps coming on. So, I think I got it right. I think C is going to be 97. I think D is going to be 98. I'm voting D is my favorite on this one.
This is more solely.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Zen.
As far as I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, I wasn't wearing my
They are
glasses. There's
bagged.
a chance where
I wonder if that's interesting that the bottles are different sizes.
Oh yeah,
What
well,
did
did
they
you see?
do
What did you see
there?
the unveiling?
Yeah, there was.
So this
a
was also the year of the label change,
for
yeah.
sure. I didn't know there was a bottle height change.
Oh sure, why make it easy?
I'm gonna go. C's my favorite, and C is 98.
C is your favorite.
So this
and
is C, right?
Yeah. That's this one. If you need to smell it again.
No, it's they're. I hope I'm not saying the wrong thing, guys, but they are
be honest.
they are night and day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're both good, but for different reasons.
Yep.
And again, I'm not sure if I said I'd have this with a cigar, and now when I taste it, I'm getting hints of tobacco. So I don't know if I'm influencing my own mind, or maybe my mind was ahead of my mouth. Maybe that's really what I picked up on. But I would say that for myself, I like this one as the more complete wine. They're both drinking really well today. I would also enjoy, like I said, I would enjoy this with a cigar, almost like a dessert wine. So I'm going to say that I like C, and I would say, wow, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say it's 90.
So you got a 50-50 chance of getting it right.
Okay, you're right. So I'm getting more fruit
Yes.
on this one, but I'm also detecting that it's just at that point where in a year it may start to fall into that porty
Yes,
type of.
but in my world, warm equals sweet.
In his world, warm equals sweet,
Yeah.
but I live in my world. So I'm gonna say this is the 98.
All right, so you're saying that C is 98.
C, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, just because I think it's.
All right, so you both preferred C. I preferred D. We called both of them 98. Guest
Wait,
of honor.
you called D 98.
I
Right?
did.
You're saying this is 98? Okay, let's just see if you're right.
Yeah.
All right. Again, for those of you gambling at home,
98?
Oh,
got it.
Blind squirrel! Woo! He shoots, he
I
scores!
think that bottle size may have told you something.
Oh, see how he does it? No one even give me credit for it.
Well,
No,
good.
no,
I
it's-
did not expect that I'd like a 97 over a 98.
7. Wow. Yeah, me too. But
Nicely done.
Again,
That
Nicely
97
done.
is holding up
that's
gorgeous.
What makes it fun. That's what makes it fun. So the 98 again is the one with the more fruit.
Well, I thought in the first flight, I thought you guys. Well, no, you did. You said you thought B had a little bit more fruit than A
Did I
did.
say
Yeah.
it's sweeter? It's just,
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah. Okay,
Let's get it. Let's do this.
We're running low on time.
Yeah,
so.
I know. They always tell us 45 minutes, which means an hour and 5 minutes.
They say you've been on for 45 minutes too long. It's like, well, you told
You guys
us to
have
do
all
this.
got your rear end muscles are in full swing. You've been sitting in front of a computer for 10 months now, so you guys are all pretty practiced at this. All right, so we are now going A, B, C, D, E. I always have to sing the song.
Owl Mountain, Zinfandel.
So for those collectors at home of Elyse, this has been the most frequently requested Zinfandel in the entire portfolio is How Mountain.
Is it the Court of Owl?
It's the Howell Mountain Zin.
Am I wrong? Where's Court of Owl?
Cordoval is the heart of the valley, I think that means.
Okay.
And it is a collection of Howell Mountain. Back in the day, they used Hain Vineyard and Morsoli. So
Yeah.
I think that was like the blend of three amazing vineyards. And we did a show on Cordoval, didn't we?
We did. We did the entire vertical of Cordoval.
Yeah.
And that was, to me, a whole different approach. I think he was making a softer, brighter version of some of those wines, whereas the single vineyard, I think, got the... whenever you're doing a single vineyard wine, you always pick that juicy, bad darkness that'll going to really represent that site, and then you take the other barrels and start blending. And so I think sometimes it's common to see a little, maybe bigger, denser wine being made for the single vineyard.
Holding together pretty well.
Yeah, How Mountain is an interesting appellation in that when you hear the words mountain, you expect this super intense, super dark, super tannic beast of a wine. And yet How Mountain has always provided this amazing softness up there. There's a really volcanic nature to some of the wines that I've always found fascinating. And How Mountain was one of the more recognized spots back in the day. The Keys family, way on top of How Mountain. We're planting Zinfandel back in the turn of the century. And to this day, once again, for you Merlot fans out there, the Keys Ranch up at the very top of How Mountain, is a Merlot vineyard up there. But the site here, the How Mountain, has got a really, really interesting complexity to it.
Yeah, and it's got that sweet fruit here, but in a balanced way. It's not that kind of pairing with cigars. I'm not saying it couldn't, but not as kind of on the edge of like that 98 Zin was. But I think it's still fresh. It's definitely round and plush and lush.
These guys have planted that word in my head over the first 4 wines, but savory. This has just got all kinds of savory to it, man. This is almost like charcuterie for me. Like this is like
that's a great call. It's got a little meatiness to it.
Let's see, 98.
So this one thing that I know we haven't talked about it today, and I don't really hear a lot about. And we're not doing it, but I think it's important to, on occasion, decant your wines as well.
Oh yeah,
because especially when you're dealing with old wine like this, or aged wine, I should say. It's like
who you calling?
It's like a genie trapped in a bottle, right? So you open the bottle and it escapes. And sometimes you have the patience and you can really afford the time to let it sit in the glass. Because different things evolve, things happen inside the bottle,
call.
And they need to,
absolutely,
on occasion need to air out.
So you're saying this is Barbara Eaton's belly button? This is
Oh,
where we're going with this. This
I
is
wish. I wish. You don't know how much.
In honor of Lent. I meant Lent.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is,
what are you saying, Rudy?
when I taste this one, I'm detecting something.
Yes.
It's not bad, but I would just say that I'd like to revisit this in just a few minutes. So sometimes, if you get a decanter and not those wide base decanters, maybe one that's a little more narrow in size because you don't want to really expose it too much air, you would definitely benefit from that.
Sure. Yes, and also the decanting is a huge thing. I think when a lot of us hear decanting, we're thinking hour, 2 hours. When you're dealing with mature wines, it doesn't always mean that. One, the greatest kind of reason for decanting old wines is catching sediment.
Yeah.
But also getting it to open in 5 to 10 to 20 minutes like it would take maybe an hour if you just left the bottle open. We are tasting all of these for the first time, open them right before the show because we don't necessarily know, and we actually didn't pre-taste any of these.
Right.
We want that authentic kind of reaction on camera, but a decanter does help, but it could only be for 15, 20 minutes.
And that just goes back to playing with it, man. Have fun. Try one from bottle to glass. Try one with a decanter.
Yeah, look at the color there.
You're going to find your happy place. You're going to find a good fulcrum in the wines, and that'll be your style of drinking that particular wine. We love people chiming in and telling us kind of their style and what they've done. Let's see. Historically in 98, Google was launched.
Yeah,
Anybody that
was
uses
the one I was
Google,
gonna
that was
say.
the year that they kind of started this whole nutty idea of a search engine. And well, they didn't start it, but they sort of took it the next level, I guess, for a better descriptor.
They released the first iMac.
Viagra sprang to life.
Oh, I thought you were going to keep it positive. Oh, I guess that is positive.
The second of the Jordan 3-peats, 98, was the
Utah.
the infamous
Brian Russell, or is it Byron or Brian? Byron. Also, I saw, kind of neat to see two shows that were super popular back then that have now, one has already reemerged and one is reemerging again this year. So Will and Grace has already made the comeback, and Sex and the City started in 98 and now is making a big comeback.
Yes. Sex in the City, Sex on the City, whichever,
Sex in
however
it,
you,
and it,
next
on
to, whoever preposition phrase works for you,
Bummer Samantha's not going to be in it this time.
Mommy, this might be my favorite of the day, man.
One little thing that I picked up on as I was just looking at the 2 years is that 98 was for telecom. Again, that's where I'm from. The most popular phone was made by Nokia.
Oh,
That's
man.
right, I did see that.
Was that the non-flip, the little teeny tiny little torpedo guy?
Motorola was, I had a Razor.
It was Nokia,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no such thing as an iPhone or an Android, and even BlackBerry had yet to do voice. It was just a pager.
Yeah, my big claim to fame was the infamous StarTAC with my little antenna, and the batteries that broke in the first 6 weeks you owned the stupid thing, man. The most expensive phone I ever owned.
This is
So again,
pretty tight.
Yeah.
2 different wines.
This might be my favorite one of the entire flight, though. This has got roundness, it's got spice, there is flesh to it. Like, this is flesh. This is a full-on knife and fork going on. The cinnamon's there, so I got my baking spice. It's almost like everything we've talked about in elements today has come together for me in this wine.
Yeah, this is hard to tell.
I'm declaring that F is my wine of the flight. I'm declaring F is my favorite of these two. And I'm also saying that F is the 97.
Love it when you do that.
Right?
Well,
it's the greatest Hal Mountain Nebbiolo I've ever had in my entire life. That's an inside joke for blind tasters out there, man, that have been
one little cheers to Scott, from owner of V Wine Cellars. We were over there. Josh was filming a little thing for our institution brand. And there was a bottle of Barolo open, 2010. It was awesome. Stuck my nose in it, and I'm like, is this like 15 to 20-year-old Elyse in? And then I let it open a little bit, and I loved it right on the front. And then it opened up into Barolo. But it's amazing how some of these wines can really mimic some of the most coveted wines in the world with a little age on them.
Yeah.
So cheers, Scott. Thank you.
I would love to know, can we do that empirically? Is there a way to mark a bottle like down the side of it that goes, early drinkers, here's your sensation. For those of you that are cellar, this is definitely going to be cellar worthy, or somebody brave enough to put that strip on the bottle that goes, this is all in light blue. This is never going to be age worthy. The greatest sensation this wine's ever going to give you is the next 3 years. Do we know that empirically, or is it something that we really leave to the individual wine drinker?
Nobody's motivated to put that on a bottle.
Right?
you're right.
Is there any empiricals to that?
Silly rabbit.
Silly rabbit.
Come on.
All right,
We
favorite.
were misguided.
Okay, so on this flight, I'm gonna go with what is this? F.
F.
A B C D E F.
Yeah.
F, and it does seem to be the more balanced, wine to me. It's not an explosion of fruit. It's not an explosion of spice. It's just a nicely crafted wine. Interesting to see the difference between Howell Mountain and More Soli, because they're very much different.
Yeah.
Same person made the wine. They probably harvested the grapes within days of each other, maybe a week. And
How mountain typically 14 days behind the valley floor? Just on average, the mountains take a little longer to push along up there. So after your favorite, what's your guess? 97, 98.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm noticing the 98. Maybe they got bigger bottles.
Oh, see?
I'm seeing a pattern here.
All right.
And I think I've guessed wrong.
You're doing great.
Yeah, you got the first one right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw out the levels, the height levels here. I'm just going to say that the last one is a 98.
98. All right, you got it.
And that goes against what I see.
Which is, I'm pretty impressed with that, because it doesn't make logical sense just from a cheating standpoint.
Yeah.
I am
'Cause he
going
doesn't
to
mind
agree.
cheating, yeah.
I'm just deduction.
Yes.
I'm pretty good at it. I hate to agree with Christopher on the fact that I think the last one is 97, but it also is my favorite. And that would be choosing, if that is correct, that would be choosing the 97 twice as my favorite, which I did not expect to do. Damn you, 97.
Okay.
All right.
97, 98. So anybody that's at home, again, all 6 of these are available in 750s for sure, and Magnum's not across the board, so it's kind of hit and miss.
98.
D is the 98.
Yeah, that bottle thing.
Interesting that this was the only wine that we all universally agreed on, by the way. We had differences in the other 2, but this was the only universal. Yes, you in the back.
Will Elyse TV continue as restrictions are lifted and we reopen?
We'll put the donate sticker on the bottom, so only if you donate, to the charity of your choice, which is Elyse Winery, then we can continue, because this costs a lot of money.
If you buy wine and drink it, yes, we'll continue to do it. Otherwise, we got to turn the lights off, people.
Yeah, it might be. Who knows? We haven't talked about it, but hopefully we have plenty of visitation to where we're not able to do it. But we'd love to do it, and we'll see what we can do. I think we have somebody with a better answer about to speak. Cheryl.
Yes. Well, we definitely have a couple coming up for sure, including the preview of our wine club.
Our next week's show is the preview of the Wine Club release coming out. And this is
You don't want to miss this.
This is us starting to get into the era, the Elyse 2.0 era, where it's all of our wines and starting to become part of the collection, and that's.
I can't speak for Rudy, but I do know that Lund and Garrett thrive on attention and praise. So you can send any little love letters over to them. It helps them get up in the morning.
Throw us a bone.
Things to themselves in front of the mirror before they come to work.
We're good enough. We're smart enough.
I like to fly under the radar in stealth mode.
Yeah, I'm more like you. But seriously,
I have a feeling.
thank you for watching, and yes, we will be having some more episodes of Elyse.
Absolutely, we're going to keep. If you got an idea, please, and again, you can take this same thing, purchase the wines, and we can do a private Zoom tasting around these wines. You can come up with a theme for one of our shows and send it our way, and we'll put the show together and have fun with it. So there's a lot of options to have fun here. So,
and when before he wraps it up, when you get a 6-pack, invite your friends over. Keep a distance. Whatever we need to do, but it only takes one 6-pack to have a Zoom tasting with 6 of your friends.
In a hot tub together later anyway, so why
exactly. It's just we're caveat.
Rudy, thanks for coming on the show today, Bob. I really appreciate you making another trip with us, man. Even knowing what you were getting into, making a second trip is always awesome for us.
And it's scary to put yourself out there. Cheers guys.